Welcome to episode 13 of Finding North. As we promised in our last episode just before the new year, we're trying to continue with more episodes in 2021. This is going to be the first one of the year. It's been a pretty hectic start into the new year. I think that's fair to say. It's been so much on the news in the first week, good and bad. So there's plenty to talk about, from obviously some of the things that is going on over in the US, to Elon Musk becoming the richest man in the world, continuous hints, or it seems that the breakup of big tech really picks up momentum in the US. There's also from the UK news coming that some of the banning of third-party cookies by Google is up for discussion. So plenty of things to discuss, Fahim. What has been sort of your topic of the week that stuck on your mind and you think we should start talking about?
Well, yeah, lots going on. I would love to maybe just share some thoughts on the whole Tesla Elon Musk thing, only because I've been a long time follower of Tesla. I wish I had bought more shares at the time when it was, I don't know, 100 or 80 or whatever it was. I think Elon Musk is somebody that I tend to just follow as well. Somebody who's a geek or a tech or an engineer at heart, and he's just got such big ambitious goals, and he's day in, day out, year after year, just proving the critics wrong. So I think, why don't we talk about him? He's become the world's richest person by many means, but I think a lot of that cash is not yet liquid. It's all stuck in shares of some form or not.
Yeah.
But I think amazing how, if I'm not mistaken, just in the last 12 months, his wealth has 12x or 11x. So I think Jeff felt maybe feeling very comfortable in his position, and within a space of 12 months, somebody takes that crown, and those crowns are not so easy. It takes that crown away, and it's not. And I think it's types of changes, types of acceleration, types of record-breaking stuff that shouldn't be surprising us going forward, because we live in such a different world. I've always believed that, recently actually, that past performance, or what historically, it gives you a clue of what is to come, but do not underestimate the power of the next thing, and what could surprise you going forward, as we know 2020 and what is to come. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Elon Musk and Tesla, and becoming the world's biggest manufacturer, even though they don't produce that many cars?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's two thoughts I have around it. Like, as much as I respect Jeff Bezos, and I think everyone does, probably goes down as one of the, if not the greatest businessman human mankind has ever seen, right? And therefore it justifies that he, for a time, and maybe he will be again, depending how the stock market goes, will be the richest man on the planet. I think looking at what Elon Musk is just trying to achieve with the ventures that he starts, I think we can undoubtedly agree on that he's aiming for a higher purpose and goal with the ventures that he's setting up than necessarily Amazon, right? As much as we all love Amazon Prime and whatnot, it's not really, I can't see that it's going to be a net positive for human mankind, and I think it's positive for many, but it's also negative for many others, right? If you think about small brick and mortar retail stores and so on, they're being pushed out. And, this guy is almost he's trying to solve every big problem there is on the planet, whether it's, you know, combustion engine cars and the emissions with Tesla, or solar, or, you know, traffic in big cities with the Boring Company, or SpaceX. Like everything he does is not necessarily just to, you know, be the greatest businessman on the planet, or just be the most customer-centric person. He's just trying to solve human mankind's biggest problems. And the fact that this has now made him the richest man on the planet, I think to some extent is something very positive, because it feels like the markets and Wall Street and so on are finally, you know, rewarding him for being so stubborn in his pursuit to really tackle those problems. So that's like the first thing. And then the second thing that is for me very surprising, that's why I'm, you know, we both have a little bit of skin in the game, as you said just before we started. So small positions. For me, I have a very small position in Tesla and Amazon. But for me, what I don't fully understand with this recent rally is, I understand Amazon because it's one of, if not the brand that has benefited most from the pandemic, you know, because shops are closed and people are shopping online. With Tesla in particular, it's just that the reality is not justifying the current, like, you know, state of the share price. I know, like, the stock market always trades the future. I'm getting a little bit worried about where this whole thing is going, you know. And there's like Bitcoin and the DAX and the Nasdaq, they keep hitting all-time highs. So I'm just wondering if everything is a little bit too bullish at the moment.
There's an element of hype for sure, but I also think, you know, that maybe the way we've been measuring the past or the current is very different, right? I think on Tesla specifically, because I know you and I have had good, healthy debates around it being overpriced or not. For me, I think is two things that it deserves a high valuation, but not the. I think the PE ratio is in the 1200s. You know, believe it or not, it is just mind-boggling stuff, right? So I think what Tesla offers is, I think we can all agree it is just become the household name. Like all my kids, they think the only company that makes electric and cool car is Tesla, right? They don't even know, but you know what? They know that they know the brand, and it's become a household name. And we both know the value and the power of brand itself, right? And then the other area I think is autonomous. Second floor.
Speaking of
Safia,
your children.
I know. Safia, thank you. Just leave it there. Thank you. Yeah. I did put a sign outside the door saying, hey, we're recording something, but...
They heard Tesla. Tesla?
Yeah, Tesla. Yeah, you buying one. So I think, and then the other thing around Tesla is, I think the future of autonomous driving and not owning cars, but just subscribing to a service that just picks you up, and that just being automated. They've got such a first mover advantage with all the data they're collecting and improving their algorithm and technology. Because I personally think that the moat is not really around the battery efficiency itself. I'm sure other manufacturers will find will compete with that. But because they now have these cars out there, and the data and self-learning algorithms to get that first mover advantage, and having these autonomous taxi services, I think we'll be subscribing to transport in the future at some point. Before it was like, oh, this is a sci-fi movie type of thing. But I could say, look, in the next 5 years, maybe we're not going to own cars. We're going to subscribe to a service. They're going to pick us up, drop us off. We don't have to worry about servicing, MOTs, changing the oil and owning a depreciating asset of some sort. I think a lot of the market is definitely rewarding that and hyping up its thing. But I also think that the company valuation, and I would love your thoughts on this as well, is highly dependent on Elon Musk itself. So if he's not around tomorrow, will the company be, I mean, I'm sure it'll go through a dip, but how much of the company is directly related to the Elon Musk being the front man for it?
I mean, if some people, to completely oversimplify the market, you can basically take stocks and put into two categories, which is growth stocks and value stocks. So growth stocks is the one where they don't trade on the earnings that they have, but on their growth potential. And I think also their potential in order to really be the future ecosystem of something, right? Whether it's, as you said, Tesla for autonomous driving. So it's not so much about the actual car that we currently see, the Model X or whatever, but the underlying platform that it will provide in the future, and also the sort of story it puts around it that will help shift a massive multi-trillion market into one direction going forward. So I think that's one. Amazon has been very famous for this. Jeff Bezos always said, like, your margin is my opportunity, because that's the difference between a growth and a value stock. The value stock, they look for margin, because then they can pay dividends, and people who invest in value stocks, they look mostly for dividends, because there's not so much growth there anymore. It's so more about like being the most efficient. And a lot of those, as you said, I think depend on also the storytelling skills of the founder, or not the skills but the potential, because maybe Elon Musk is not sometimes when he speaks, he's maybe not the most articulate person, but what he says is very profound, and you can feel like he knows everything around building, almost everything about building like a rocket or building that car and so on. So I think a lot of this is around the founder being a good story, and being able to really convince people that what he's trying to achieve is profound, and it's going to change the world substantially in the long term. So
what do you think around, because a similar story that you could correlate is where Steve Jobs was to Apple what Elon Musk is to Tesla in a way. And of course, with Steve Jobs passing away, I think Tim Cook and the company has flourished as well. If you just look at where they've gone into, maybe some may argue maybe not as innovative and groundbreaking, but from an investment share price perspective, it has really grown steadily, right? Do you think that Elon's thinking about that? I don't know how much Steve Jobs was thinking around his legacy and making sure that he leaves something sustainable behind.
I don't know. I feel it's hard to tell from being so far away from those people. Just my personal feeling is that I think Steve Jobs probably would have been one to care a little bit more about the value of the stock and where it actually sits, whereas Elon Musk, I don't think he gives a damn. Like, it's nice. I think he even tweeted, I think I saw that someone tweeted, Elon Musk is now the richest man on the planet. And then someone posted, and he just commented and retweeted. It's like, okay, cool, let's go back to work now. Like, I guess probably if you already have, I don't know what he started with at the beginning of the year, 50, 60 billion, does it really matter? Maybe does it really matter if now suddenly like the richest and you have like 120 or whatever the final number was when I don't
I think
know.
what it does give him, though, I think I mean, he needed to go public and raise money, and that's why you do an IPO and all that.
Yeah.
I think he kind of now has the cash and the buying power to maybe even accelerate what he needs to do. You know, I think he definitely, it was part of his plan to, you know, increase the valuation, allow him to liquidate shares and bring more cash into the company. And so I think all good, but, you know, I definitely agree for a company, you know, for the numbers, the production numbers they're making, and for it to be valued, you know, and we've all seen the charts where Tesla is on one side and all the manufacturers are on the other side. But maybe also, you know, is Tesla a car company? You know, it's a question mark whether, is it even a technology company? Because a lot of these technology come out disrupting so many different industries. It's a category of its own, and whether it's a pure tech even, question mark. I think even that needs to be evaluated at some point.
I think public perception is definitely that Tesla is still a car company, but I think they don't think of themselves as a car company, because he explained it at one point where he said, you know, your Tesla, you mentioned earlier, a car was usually a depreciating asset. You buy it, and by the time you drive it off the parking spot from the retailer, it's worth half that what you bought it for, right? In the future, because of software upgrades, it might actually increase in value, and 10 years later your Tesla might be worth more, or whatever the name is going to be. At one point it's going to be worth more than it was at the beginning, if at that point you might even not own cars anymore. Interesting enough though is, I think some other manufacturers are, at least from a car perspective, you know, picking up. Mercedes just announced their two things. Well, their numbers from last year, and they've sold more electric cars than ever before. Still not that many in terms of all the cars that they sell, but it's definitely going into the right direction. And a lot of the investment, and it feels like the stuff they're pushing in the market is around that segment. And they're also going to release a new luxury sedan model, I think next year, that has a range of over 700 miles, which is pretty extraordinary for like a pure electric car. If it will hold up to that, you know, like maybe. They always say 700 and it's going to be, you know, with no one in the car and like there's no wind and nothing like that. But yeah, it's a very interesting space to watch. But Tesla, I think for sure, is the company that has the most advantage at the moment, not just being a car company, but more like a platform in a sense, that to something much bigger.
Definitely. I wouldn't bet against Tesla or Elon for sure, even at these prices. So if you've got any skin in the game, I would say just hold on to it, you know. But by the way, do we need to do a little disclaimer that stocks go up and down, and this is not financial advice, you know?
I don't think we're giving anyone any advice to buy or sell at any certain point in time. So I don't think we need to do that. As long as we say we not just talk about that to hype up a stock or not, because we have some game, it's fine. I think the one thing, just to my last thought on the whole Elon thing, I think the way it works, you know, with stories and news and so on, the good thing for him is, even if he would have just hit that first place for one day, and the news would have been out there, Elon Musk is now the richest man on the planet, I think those news stick, and they give him a certain level of legitimacy, maybe in addition to, because if you know, coming back to my earlier point, if you really if you're just focusing on changing the world for the better, and maybe a lot of the times people sort of look at you like, look at this like dreaming person, right? Everything is overhyped. He needs those things, and hitting that milestone to be just even for a day considered or be the richest person on the planet. I think that gives him a lot of legitimacy, that he it will help going forward by spreading the news even further out to more potential investors to say, like, you should look over there. That's the future. I think similar what's happening a little bit with Bitcoin in the last 2 weeks. It's again suddenly on many people's radar because the rally starts again. Everyone starts talking about it. So suddenly people who've been critical of it start saying, oh, it might actually this time go up to even like $100,000 per Bitcoin. And actually what we've seen from last year with the central banks printing so much money, we need this. And it's not just about Bitcoin, it's about blockchain. And so I think a lot of these things they're here to stay, and as soon as they pick up a certain media coverage, they just get sticky in people's brain, and then you consider it and maybe start investing or really believing into it. It took me a while to believe in Tesla, and I'm still not sure about the stock price. That's my personal opinion, but and same with Bitcoin. But at least I've now really started to open myself up to the idea that this is actually maybe something much bigger than I thought it would be initially.
Yeah, I think, Bitcoin is again, is it the future? A lot of people are saying, is it a hedge against, the governments and something on the side because there is such an uncertain world? But I think it's an interesting point you made around just the element of trust. I think what is value at the end of the day is what people are willing to give it. What value, anything is what people and the community and the world says, I think that is worth something X. So I think if you look at like at the end of the day, what is money or what's currency? It's a piece of paper. At the end of the day, it's a piece of paper. You can't eat the paper, right? But is a means of exchanging your effort, your hard work to something. So if you, but at the end of the day, if you look at if somebody came down, an alien came down, and we said, look, this piece of paper, they'd be like, how? But because the trust has been embedded in it, it's a trust thing, right? Similar with gold. Gold is a similar thing. It's people say it's a store of value, but it's because it has taken thousands and thousands of years to trust a piece of metal to be of certain value. But I think, again, we may be entering a era or a generation where we may start to trust certain elements much more quicker than before. So I think Bitcoin is of a similar trajectory where this time round in this rally, you may have seen that now a lot of the hedge funds, the pension providers, mutual funds, all of those have started to put a little bit to diversify their portfolio within it. And that is just an extra tick of legitimacy, validation that is needed. I think personally, I'm a massive fan of Bitcoin, and again, should have put more in, very, very small stake, just dabbling in the space. But it does give you a lot of the convenience, the transaction. It's so ready for the digital world that we're already in, and we're even going to go into more. I think the biggest thing that also Bitcoin gives is I think, again, we're very privileged to live in a world where we've got a bank account and whatnot. I think there's a large part of the world that is shunned from a financial institution because maybe they don't have an ID, they don't have a birth certificate, or they live in rural parts of the world where it's just, commercially, it doesn't make sense to
Mm,
bring those folks into the
mm,
financial system. So I
yeah,
think Bitcoin, because the infrastructure of I don't know, internet, you know, is there and it relies on that. I think it brings a lot more people in to the market and allows to exchange to
absolutely.
whatnot. Yeah.
I think the trust thing is for me that's for the last couple of days that I've been doing some research is the one that sticks with me, was the most clear that I start to really understand the potential that it has, because as you said earlier, paper, the dollar, the euro, the pound, doesn't really matter, right? It's a piece of paper, it's worth nothing. It's just a trust that there's some value in it that makes us exchange it with each other and allow us to trade. But this was based on the gold standard to say we cannot just print money, forever. It needs to be tied to, it needs to be backed up with a certain amount of bank gold in sort of like a central bank, and that standard is
Yeah.
not there anymore. So if then in our institutions, in order to solve problems like the current one, right, where they need money and they just keep printing it, that um, the money you hold, the cash you hold, is just gonna be worth less in the future. So you're looking for alternatives, and one alternative might be stock, it might be real estate, but why can it not also be something completely new that is digital if we already live in such a digital world? And that's why for
Yeah.
me, and then with the whole distributed ledger system, and that we almost cut out the official institutions out of the transactions, and we just build this level or system of trust in between you and me, so a peer-to-peer thing
Yeah.
is tremendously powerful. And hence for me it starts to get really interesting, even though I don't have any Bitcoin, because for me at the beginning it was so hyped up, and when things get so hyped up, like I'm talking 4 years ago, I usually distance myself from it. I'm like, that's maybe because I'm cautious. I'm not sure. And it was funny actually. Then there were a lot of people I knew from work and personally. There was no other topic than Bitcoin anymore, and suddenly they got very quiet, because then the first one when it went up to
Yeah.
27, and then suddenly it went down to, I don't know, 6,000 or something like this. And but now, just maybe because of what's happening with the pandemic, and obviously maybe just in the last 2 minutes also, I think we should talk about quickly what happened in the US
Yeah.
last week. The trust in our institutions is under real pressure at the moment, and
Yeah.
who knows what's going to happen within the next 10, 20, 30 years with how we perceive states, governments, all that, how we organized. As we can see, things can get really easily out of hand, either by a global pandemic or by one sociopath holding the most powerful office in the world. So I think maybe that's also why some of the institutional investors are now looking, well, maybe we should hedge against the euro, maybe we should hedge against the dollar by just also putting a little bit of our stake into
Yeah.
something different.
I think the whole trust of, it also comes into the whole play of, capitalism, who is it serving,
Yeah,
because you know uh, we're going through, the world is going through one of its biggest challenges, unemployment. I'm sure if you look at certain figures of unemployment, mental well-being, it's really low, but at the same time the stock market is an all-time high. There's
mm,
definitely a big disconnect
yeah,
of what society is rewarding and who's benefiting from it and whatnot. So I think that's a scary chart where a certain portion of the society, and a small number of them compared to the rest, tends to benefit more in times
yeah,
of crises, and based, people are struggling to send find a job, sending their kids to school, finding it hard to feed them, you know. So there's you know, even if we take the US, there's a very high number of households, or the population, that is, by I think the UN standards, technically regarded as, you know, they're in poverty. But at the same time, you know, you see other graphs. So, and I think that in itself does lead to a lot of questions being asked, and I think that debate should be had, whether the system needs to be reset or some sort. I think I don't think we've got the answers for it, but I think it's something that people are becoming a little bit more aware of. And maybe just on the whole topic of antitrust and whatnot, what are your thoughts on, you know, Facebook and Twitter? Well, Twitter went all out and banned Trump permanently.
Yeah.
How do you digest that?
You know, it's those situations where on one shoulder you have an angel, and on the other one you have a devil, and you don't know which one you should listen to. So I think banning him is the right thing, because with what he did, he incited violence. And the question, but also this is like, also this is a tricky one. But for me, from a Twitter point of view, a little too less, a little too late. Or you know, for me, he's been doing that for the last 5 years, and now I think just before he leaves the office, they're now trying to make this statement. I think pretty much they're just trying to save their asses, not to get, you know, in order to put themselves in good terms with the new government. That's sort of, I have a feeling it's just weird. They could have done much more, I think, over the last 4 years. And also, I think in terms of banning him completely, I heard some interesting arguments that, you know, would you rather have your, I don't want to call it enemy, but someone with a very different opinion, even though it might be very radical, express that opinion in the dark where you can't see it? Or do you actually want to, and therefore it maybe reaches less people, fair? Or do you want to have it actually out there in the public, but at least you can see it, and if you can see it, you can, let's say, control it a little bit more? Because if they ban someone like him from the platform, or anyone who incites hate and such things from the public, from such a public platform, and then they're gonna start doing that maybe more in the dark, I'm not sure if this is necessarily beneficial. So I don't even want to talk about, I don't want you to talk about Facebook, to be honest. I'm a fan of Facebook when it comes to like what it allows businesses to do and how you can reach audiences and so on. I think the political and the whole political advertising and targeting of people with messages is a real threat to democracy, and they have not put any measurements in place in order to stop that. There have been proven studies that show, I think they've been leaked, that Facebook has actually realized the more what's the word, the more fight, or the more opposing opinions they show, the more engagement. I think we spoke about this on the podcast before.
I think once or twice.
The more engagement they get, so they're not necessarily have any interest in, you know, connecting people and you know, showing the good and, you know, positive things. It's the more controversial it is, the more engagement it gets, and the more those messages will be spread. So I think they're a real threat. If they're not going to put more governance and measurements in place, how those platforms can be used for political messaging in particular. How about you?
It's it's a tough one, because, you know, like, it is a platform where people can voice their own opinion, right? I think that's one thing. So it's a facilitator of that. I think I'm not sure the the details of the algorithm. I think Twitter doesn't tend to promote highly engaging content, and by engaging we mean, it already falls into the trap of that divides people and things like that. But I think Facebook, some of their algorithms are designed to increase the reach of certain posts that tend to get a criteria of high engagement, and it happens to be the ones that is inciting things that are not good for society. So I think these platforms should be regarded as media and publishers. They should be responsible for the content, even though they will say that, oh, but this is anybody can post anything. But at the end of the day, if they've got a monetizing machine behind it, anybody that puts something out there is a content publisher. It doesn't matter whether it was free or not for them and they're expressing their own opinion. But you're right, I think the world is more divided than ever. And through technology, it has allowed us to see this divide. I think it always existed, but there wasn't a globalized channel to really see it for what it is. And I think the way, and it's not just the Facebooks or Twitters of the world. Just look at all the news channels as well. They all need to rethink about. I think ultimately, we may have discussed this before, it's like, how do we reward such platforms and such frameworks, right? And because currently they're kind of rewarded through engagement, and unfortunately, certain content gets more engagement, so the algorithm optimizes for that, and even the people that work there, because their reward structure and compensation is attached to that growing numbers, engagement. The system, the way the system is designed and how it's rewarded is completely flawed, right? So imagine if such companies by the government were given tax breaks for promoting, I don't know, good stuff.
Good stuff.
Like, I don't know, like the number of people through their platform that manage to get jobs or learning or something like that, and they get tax credits, so it means that they pay less tax, or even the investing community rewards for that in some weird form. But I think this whole system is so tied up with it's entangled. It's going to take a while, but I think I think we should definitely have that dialogue. I think as investors, and I know the individual investors make a very small percentage of that, but I think these big hedge funds and mutual funds and pension holders, etc., they should also have a moral obligation about where they invest, because that seems to reward a company for what they're doing and whatnot. But it's a complicated one. I think
it's a very complicated
it's a deep one.
I think maybe just to wrap up, because we said we're going to do 30 minutes. We're already overrunning, as we always do, but that's fine. We're not a very I think we don't consider us like a political conversation podcast channel, whatever.
No.
But I think, and it has been said by so many people, but for me, I think it's just important, if friends of mine or anyone listens to that, if you've seen what happened in front of the Capitol this week, and you just think about what happened 6 months ago, I think it was, or 7 months ago, when we were fully in the middle of running our last batch of episodes, and the whole Black Lives Matter thing happened. The thought that those protesters would have gone in front of the Capitol, would have tried something else, and the consequences and what would have happened is a real, for me, I think white supremacy, or has never been shown more than on that occasion, when mainly white protesters managed to storm the capital of the United States, break into the House chambers, stand on the speaker's podium, and for me, like it's I can't even put it in words what I've think I've witnessed on that day, and what might have happened if the setup of the rioters, because they were not protesters, right? The rioters would have been different. And I think there's a real conversation to be have about that particular fact of it. Let's forget about Trump. Hopefully we can all forget about him in 2 weeks' time. But I think that one is a real conversation to have, because I think if you've ever had to see more proof that there's still significant, division and differences in our society, I think that, even though it's the US, but it's it's the Western world, that one has been it. And yeah, as I said, we're not very political, so I don't think we're going to make whole episodes about it, but I felt it important to say that after a week like that anyone who looks at this and thinks like, if that would have been someone of us going there and trying to do something like this, it would have ended a completely different way.
Yeah, and you're right. We should be raising these points as well, even though we're not that type of podcast. But I think it is definitely a sad reality. We have been seeing these movements, and I think more and more people are recognizing, hopefully, the injustice and the different how laws are applied. I think there's definitely a lot more to come before it gets better. I think this is a generational thing, and if this generation can really try hard, and starting right from the grassroots all the way to whatever the immediate things are, because whatever has ended up wherever we've ended up in has happened over a long period of time. I think we're at the beginning of the transition. I would say it's going to take a generation for sure before any significant change, slowly but surely. But personally for me, I think those the minorities of the world, I think they're starting to find at least their voice. There are people willing to listen, and change makers, lawmakers are being made feel uncomfortable, and this is uncomfortable truths that we have to face for sure. So it's a bit of a journey to go through, but I think we're right at the beginning of it.
Yeah, and in order to maybe end on a positive note, if you try to see the silver lining in anything, at least what this has done, it has exposed again on a different level that those problems still exist, and now there's at least probably a debate to be had, and people talk about it like we do now. And I think a lot of more people are going to talk about it, and only that, I think, can be or will be the first step towards real change. And I think therefore trying to see the positive in it, that might be it. And it hopefully we can only do better from now on going forwards.
Definitely good stuff. I think that's a good place to end on.
I think so too. So I'm going to read us out. So thanks guys for listening. This was episode 13, the first one of the year. As always, if you listen on YouTube, please give us a like, comment if you have any thoughts, subscribe if you want to see more episodes. If you're on Spotify, please download the podcast. That is really helpful for us. If you see this on LinkedIn or any of the other channels, please reach out to us if you have any questions or comments, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Peace.